April 17th, 2021. St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. A woman in black sits alone in a wooden pew. She is 95 years old. A white handkerchief is folded in her hands. A mask covers her face, but nothing covers the emptiness beside her. The seat next to her is vacant. The whole world is watching. And the whole world understands. 74 years have just ended. To understand that empty space, we have to go back. We have to understand what filled it. The Fortress. Act 1. The Diana years. The 1980s arrived like a storm. A young princess stepped into the light, the cameras turned, the crowds surged, and the monarchy began to fracture. But inside the palace, something else was happening. Elizabeth and Philip were growing quieter and closer. The glamour of Diana's era threw their marriage into sharp relief. While the world watched one kind of royal story, they were living another. Philip wrote to Diana, long, careful, private letters. He was trying to help her find her footing. He saw her vulnerability clearly. He also saw the danger in what she was becoming. A woman playing to the gallery in an institution that did not forgive it. He watched his son's marriage unravel with growing alarm, not only as a father, as a man who understood what the institution required. Charles and Diana's separation in 1992 was a public admission of a private failure. For the Queen, it was a dismantling of everything she had tried to hold together. But she and Philip did not unravel. Their marriage had been built in a different time, on different foundations. They had learned long ago to be steady when everything else was not. Away from the cameras, they managed the great estates together. Balmoral, Sandringham, Windsor. These were not just properties, they were anchors. A world they understood and controlled when the wider world did not behave. The marriage had become a fortress, and so far the fortress held. The fire. Act 2. Annus Horribilis. Then came the year the fortress was tested. The Queen would later call it her Annus Horribilis, her year of horror. 3 of her children's marriages collapsed. The press, once largely deferential, turned, and then, in November, Windsor Castle itself caught fire. Flames moved through ancient rooms that had stood for centuries. The Queen walked through the smoke-damaged corridors afterward. She looked, by every account, bereft. This was not just a building. This was childhood. Memory, the very heart of what she was. Philip was in Argentina when the fire broke out. He was on the phone immediately. He was always there, even when he was not in the room. Weeks later came the Guildhall speech. Standing before the Lord Mayor of London, the Queen allowed something rare. She allowed the world to see that she was tired. 1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure, she said. It was as close to public vulnerability as she ever came. And Philip stood beside her, steadfast, silent, present. The restoration of Windsor became their next shared project, a metaphor for what they had always done together. They did not break, they rebuilt. The retreat. Act 3. Wood Farm. Time does what it always does to storms. It softens them. In the summer of 2017, Prince Philip formally retired from public life. He was 96 years old. He had completed 22,219 official engagements. His final comment on the matter was entirely characteristic. "I've done my bit," he said. They retreated to Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate. It was his favourite place, modest, unpretentious, quiet, a world away from palaces and protocol. The routine they settled into had been earned over 7 decades. Reading, walking the grounds, tending the gardens. He painted watercolours and argued with the newspapers. She enjoyed, perhaps for the first time, an unhurried companionship, the kind that duty had always interrupted. Then came 2020, a pandemic, a lockdown. the world stopped, and Elizabeth and Philip found themselves together at Windsor uninterrupted for months. It was, by several accounts, something neither had fully expected. A gift, a return to something early and simple. Their world gradually narrowed, as the world does at the end. They accepted it quietly. They had always accepted things quietly. The last goodbye. Act 4, April 9th, 2021. Prince Philip died at Windsor Castle on April 9th, 2021. He was 99 years old, 2 months short of 100. He had planned his own funeral with the same clear-eyed practicality he brought to everything. His hearse was a modified Land Rover, a vehicle he had helped design himself decades earlier. Not a gilded carriage, a working vehicle. It was his last joke, his final signature. 30 mourners walked behind the coffin into St. George's Chapel. Pandemic restrictions had made the grandeur of a state funeral impossible. What remained was something smaller and, somehow, more true. Beat. The Queen did not walk. She sat alone in a wooden pew, in black, in stillness, a white handkerchief folded in her hands. The image moved around the world within hours. A woman of 95 sitting alone in a space where a presence used to be. Decades earlier, at the coronation, he had promised to be her liege man of life and limb. For nearly 74 years of marriage and a reign that would exceed 70 years, the following year he had kept that promise. His death was not a rupture, it was a fulfillment. The quiet closing of a private language only 2 people had ever spoken. The real marriage. So, was it a happy marriage? Yes, but not the kind that gets made into films, not a fairy tale. It was something rarer than that. It was a real marriage, built on duty, refined in fire, sustained for 74 years by something quiet and private and unbreakable. A woman in a pew, a white handkerchief, a vacant seat. That is what 74 years looks like.